get through this.
Easy for listening. I was able to do it.
Easy for dancing.
I'm not a great lover of cats. That's my fear.
You're a disgrace, you are.
Not me. That's my fear.
You're a disgrace, you are.
Hello and welcome to One-on-One Shadowboxing. Today my fellow shadowboxer is Tom Locke. Tom, how are you?
I'm well, thanks Tibor.
Nice to have you in the studio.
Thanks for having me.
Tom, you born in Australia?
Actually, I was born overseas. I was part of the British government time over in India, and in 1947 my grandfather, who was the Chief of Customs in a port there, and my father and myself and my family didn't have to get out, but we got out. We came here. I've been here since I've been 2.5.
In WA?
Yep.
Or?
Yep. I lived and I grew up around Maylands, East Perth.
You are a clinical psychologist, among other things.
I am.
What is attracted to you into clinical psychology? Why are you doing it?
Why am I doing it? Oh, I guess early in my life, a lot of trauma in my migration. My mother died soon after. I knew what it was like all of a sudden falling from grace and being in a difficult place. So my childhood was less than easy, but I had lots of love in it. I was fortunate in that, but a lot of difficult circumstance. I guess that's attracted me to the helping profession.
What do you think, what's put the people onto that trend to engage with psychologists?
Well, psychologists aren't new, really. They've been around in every village since time immemorial. They call them different things. But there's usually a person you can go to seek counsel, to seek advice, to bring a problem to. That kind of a person's always been around. And now with behavioural science and things we've learnt more, it's become more of a science. And it's been refined, but really nothing new about it.
Nothing new about it.
Nothing new about it, really. People putting their thoughts, of which we have thousands, into words, like we're doing now, and then sometimes shifting those words into actions. They're like 3 legs to a stool. And someone that can help that process, we call them a psychologist, but it's a process of change, it's a process of release. And that's what I do for a living.
And what do you think, the drugs which is prescribed in a problematic area for the patients, is the effective or the psychological treatment is more effective? Which one is more natural and more helpful?
Well, I'm a psychologist, but I work with people that have psychotropic medication as part of their regime. My area especially is post-traumatic stress. And the gold standard of treatment, the frontline treatment in that disorder, is psychological therapy.
Rather than the drugs?
Yeah, that's not to say the drugs are not used in difficult circumstances for people that need help and they need it in an emergency situation. But in terms of longer-term therapy for post-traumatic stress, which includes anxiety and depression, they're embedded in that disorder, psychological therapy is frontline gold standard.
Where are we with this science? Is it a science or?
Certainly a behavioural science. The Australian government looks upon evidence-based practice as the only practice they support under the Medicare dispensation. So, yeah, we're very much bound by science, called upon by the government to demonstrate evidence-based outcomes.
These days now, in the media at least, we got every day some new invention of disorder. Have we got that many disorders? I mean, the book is full of disorders. Is that so, or we just like to say we don't know about it, so this is a new disorder?
Again, in the area of my specialty, which is post-traumatic stress, that is a relatively new disorder as such. Looking back at it over time, it's always been there. It was called shell shock in the era of World War I. After World War II, it was anxiety condition. In the 80s, it was defined as post-traumatic stress disorder. When you look at that disorder, as I do, you can very quickly cut to the chase and tell whether a person has that or not. There are a number of instruments you can assess them with, which, if they respond to them, truthfully, and they don't always do that. For example, soldiers coming back, from deployment, you can give them a screen for, post-traumatic stress, and they'll tick all the column down the left-hand side and say they're fine. And they do this because they want to be deployed again, and often they're not. But if, when the time comes, for them to exit, and you often see them sit down and tick the thing honestly, and you very quickly, when that happens, can get a very quick picture in a matter of minutes, what you've got on the other side of the table from you. I can sit with a person for 15 or 20 minutes, and without even giving them an assessment, I start to get a good intuition of what's in the room with me.
So when you're not working as a clinical psychologist, what's your hobby? What you do?
Well, I love the ocean. I'm in, on or under the ocean every day of my life. And I live at Cottesloe. I love the environment of Cottesloe. My family, I've brought up all my children there. All of them have been part of the ocean. All of my 9 grandchildren are all in surf clubs here in WA and over in Queensland. They're all part of the ocean as well too. That makes me feel good.
And you are a surf lifesaver since the 60s.
Yep.
What are the dangers in the West Australian beaches for swimmers?
Well, there's obviously many dangers in the surf. When you enter the ocean, it's a completely different environment. You go from hero to zero very quickly in the ocean. But can I say, probably since 1997, my experience in the ocean has changed vastly from all the years that I spent in the ocean previously, and in the river before that, from the time I was a child.
What's happened?
Well, I witnessed a shark attack in 1997 down the bottom of my hill. A chap that lives around the corner from me, Brian Serikowski, and his paddling partner, Barney Hanrahan. I was there with my daughter's little dog that morning. I should have been out surfing in the same spot. Watching, and I saw this thing. It looked like a seal at first. Then it was too big for a seal, looked like a crocodile, and immediately I knew it wasn't a crocodile. And then it struck with tremendous force, knocked both of the paddlers off the ski into the water and grabbed the ski, took a big chunk out of the ski. Luckily, it was more interested in the ski that it had bitten than the 2 paddlers. I watched then as 2 other paddlers, one included Malcolm McCusker, who's our governor, very bravely went out through the surf and picked up the 2 chaps floundering in the water, brought them back into shore. I was busy dialing 000 by that time. I collected them, put them in my car. We went back, closed all the beaches along there, and then I saw all the helicopters and the news teams and other people start to arrive. And really that started a kind of sequence here in Western Australia. But can I say, after that attack, I never thought I'd see anything like that again. I had never seen anything like that. This shark could have stood on its tail and its nose would have stuck out of the water. It was that shallow. It was in a place where I'd come and gone from for 40 years, never seen anything like that in my life. That was 1997. Yeah, just the spring. The first week in November, which coincided with the next shark attack, which was around the first week in November 2000. And I was standing up the beach from that. I wasn't immediately there. I didn't witness it, but I saw the commotion. And again, I would not think it was a shark attack. I thought someone had had a heart attack further down the beach. Friends of mine were there, and they soon told me what had happened. And that's where Ken Crew got taken in very shallow water.
How shallow was the water?
Oh, it would have been almost standing, perhaps about head high, if that.
Above head high.
Or less. Right near the edge, along a strip of reef between Cottesloe and North Cottesloe. I have swum up and down that strip countless times. I don't like doing it since. I've never enjoyed that swim up along that reef ever since 2000.
Why we got these sort of symptoms, the shark? like a little bit more Cottesloe than any other beaches. What do you think? What's behind that?
Well, one of my mentors, a fellow called Don Morrison, very famous surf lifesaver, unfortunately no longer with us, but his theory I subscribe to, and others have said this too. The growth in the whale population since whales, and white pointers too for that matter, have been protected, the growth of the whale migration has increased rapidly. I read that around about 1960 there was around about 1,000 whales coming up the coast. 100 years earlier there'd been 20 or 30,000 whales. They say now that the population's getting right back up to around about that 20,000 mark. So I've read. That coincides, I think, with the increase in the sharks. The old whalers say that where you get whales migrating, you'll see white pointers.
Following the Mars.
Yes, because of the calves, because every now and again there's a dead whale and there's a movable feast. On the way to, these sharks will hunt seals and other prey, but particularly around November, when the whales are coming back. On the way up, the whales come up, they hit Garden Island, and they tend to go around the back of Rottnest. I haven't seen too many in the Rottnest Channel going north. However, on the way back, because of the shape of the coast, when they get to Yanchep, it's very easy for some of them to find their way down into the pocket, which finishes up at Cottesloe. Then they have to do a right-hand turn and go out. They can't keep going. So Cottesloe, I think, has become if you like, a pocket where whales come into, some, and white pointers following the food chain tend to come into. But I'm not a scientist in that area. I can talk to you about post-traumatic stress with some authority. I can only anecdotally and observationally talk to you about whale migration.
Tom, on that note, we need to go to a short break, but stay with us because after the break, we're coming back with more discussion with Tom Log on one-on-one shadowboxing.